down in Seabrook?
Well, so I developed that and the, what used to be called the boat superstore and all the land that's being worked on across the street. Yes, that's my guess.
Do you have plans that those townhouses next to the Hilton will look a lot nicer than those?
They will, actually, the point of reference, I was not the builder of those houses. I was the land developer of them, although I am partners in all the condo buildings going up with both superstories. And I think those plans are online if you look up Canals and Taylor Lake, and I think they're quite good plans, actually.
So question over here. So you said about 17 units, approximately 750.
14 units.
14 units, approximately 750.
Correct.
Will each of the 14 units have a boat slip and you cover parking?
They will each have a boat slip and cover parking, yes.
Will the boat slips have lifts?
Well, they will have the option of having those. That's not something we would provide. It's something that the homeowners will put in.
It would be a rendering or something we can look at.
We actually have already submitted some preliminary renderings to the city, and we'll have much more online once it's actually approved and get our final steps down.
So, asking from the fire department, what's the finished height of the structure?
So if I recall correctly, in Nassau Bay, we're supposed to be 2 foot or 3 foot above base flood. That base flood there is 18 foot bottom of the girder. So we'd be roughly 21, 22 foot finished floor elevation. The grade of the land we have brought up to approximately 8.5, 9 foot. So our road going through there would be higher than any event we've had, with the exception of Ike down here.
No, but from the 18 feet up, and then how many stories?
Oh, 2.
2 stories. About
And most, well, all of them come equipped with elevator shafts and all that.
It'll be about 35, 40 feet. finished height.
That would be pretty close after, yes.
Do you have a rendering? Is it possible for us to view that?
I don't have one here, because we don't have one complete yet. I think I gave staff a
Planning commission, I was just gonna say, any comments from the planning commission?
Unfortunately, I was out of town.
I understand, but when it passed, and.
Yes, it did pass.
Correct. There's some renderings, I'm sure you can provide some things, you've shown some things in the package. It would be helpful for folks if they could see it.
And we'll end up with a website going up once we know, assuming it's approved, we'll say, okay, this is what we know we're now building, because we know exactly what we're building, and we'll have a website based on what this is and naming and everything for it in the very near future.
Is it gonna have a private gated entrance, or is it just gonna be open, or?
It will be a private gated entrance, yes.
Yes, is that property grandfathered for a marina or for boat slips?
So the actual property boundary, of course, it follows the format of the GLO and whatnot. The actual property boundary is out in the water. 1 acre of our land is actual water.
Really?
Yeah, so our boundary's in the water now. Technically, you can't ever change that with GLO standards and whatnot. But from a slip perspective, we already have our own marina in place.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
Will you write a short-term rental restriction into your HOA deed restrictions?
I'm not gonna sit here and guarantee that, but right now, yeah, because it looks like that's just a practical thing to do, because as we look toward going to sales, we're gonna find that. And I'm already running across that on my other properties. I have some properties that are on water. Obviously, those are much more expensive than properties off the water and whatnot. And so generally, we gravitate in that direction. In fact, I'm not even sure, I kind of assume the city has,
We have that as an agenda item later on.
oh, I probably already
As
worked.
well as, I believe, the homeowners have done some.
Well, I know most of the cities right now do simply don't allow us for short-term
But
rentals.
it's got a lot more teeth if it comes in your home, in your deed restrictions. It strengthens the position of enforcement to have the year restrictions also.
It does. In fact, it very much improves our sales values, and that's why generally we gravitate in that direction.
Yeah, I compliment you on doing it, on that, on the home association.
Could you briefly describe the infrastructure improvements you have put in place under the ground to build out there? I know we've talked about it in the past.
We do, as a matter of the revised plans to you, I think tomorrow. So we'll be running a sanitary, on-site sanitary water and sewer and roadways in. And I think we have a couple hydrants going in and whatnot, it's out doing all these plans. And then, in leaving our site, we'll have our own lift station, the sewer to kind of behind Hilton on that street right behind Hilton there. And then on the water, I think we tie in on National Road 1, if I recall correctly. And I think we're tying into an 8-inch main that allows us the pressure for the hydrants. As I recall correctly in our conversation with you guys, is, we are required to have fire sprinkler systems in all the units. So they will all have fire sprinkler systems in them. And,
I might have missed this, I apologize if I did, but what's your completion target? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
it would be somewhere in the ballpark of 12 to 18 months.
Good luck, we're pulling for it.
Doesn't something, isn't there a waterway that comes across?
There is, and it's still in
So
place.
are you building over that, or?
We are not, no, we've kept that designated out. There's a channel that runs, what used to be the original, HLMP, cooling tower. That took care of NASA way back when, which is no longer in existence. There's still a channel that runs to a kind of a pool right there on National Road 1 that runs underneath it to the lake. That still stays intact as it was.
Any other questions?
Just for clarification on the rendering, do you anticipate this will look like the buildings that have been put up in Seabrook, or is it?
I do. It's going to be a fairly contemporary design with a lot of glass, and kind of following the same suit it was before.
What about the landscape of palm trees or what?
I honestly cannot, I don't have a clue about that one yet. We're not there yet. But
Can
I
we
mean,
mandate the palm trees as part of the special use permit?
I started my business as a landscape designer, so I generally gravitate on the side of heavy landscaping because I find it sells well. So,
Palm trees are real popular here.
What will the first floor be covered, include?
it'll be breakaway walls, however, it will be enclosed. The entire first floor, the entire first floor that you would see from any street perspective will be enclosed. On the water side, it will not be enclosed. And then, generally, we do some type of, 1x and 2x materials to kind of, because you have to follow a breakaway wall scenario for the velocity zone. So we'll follow those guidelines and enclose it, but it'll be closed where it can be broken away.
Two sides.
Who's responsible for the sound barrier that you mentioned?
Well, we will be, I mean, so we'll be installing that, and it's, I mean, we're doing it for the obvious reasons, we don't want to hear National Road 1 any more than we have to, it's fairly loud street, but.
All of the units are facing the water?
All but 2. 2 of them will not be facing water, the other 14 will be, and the other 12 will be.
Any other questions? Then, get over it. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
It's 9:21, public hearing is closed. Now we move to 9:2, discussion action request for the PL Land Inkton Leopard to consider a special use permit to construct a residential townhome units at 3002 National Road 1, Houston, Texas, 77058. Zena, I'm gonna have to help, you're gonna have to help me pronounce some of this, so. This is just a single approval. Any questions?
Mayor, on motion to approve the request from PAL Land Inc. in Lepar to consider a special use permit to construct a residential neighborhood consisting of townhome units at 3002 Nassau Road 1, Houston, Texas, 77058, in the city of Nassau Bay.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Moved by James, second by Michelle. Any further questions from council? Any comments?
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment that 2 things are very important to group tonight, which is we have new homes being built in Nassau Bay, which is fantastic. I think that's wonderful. Second is that it's part of an economics development that we really tried to push hard on when we got elected. So it's great to see John and expansion down that side of Nassau Bay, that side of Nassau Bay. I'm really happy with that. So that's just a comment.
that mean I get a check? John got one.
Sorry.
I just wanna make sure it's not gonna be an eyesore, because I know people that don't even live in Nassau, like those buildings in Seabrook are an eyesore, and so that, I mean, yeah, yeah.
I want to be clear though on the buildings while we're talking. There's so much construction going on down there. Are y'all talking, you're probably talking about the single family homes?
The ones that's
Still.
basically like boondoggles is,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, those weren't the ones he is referring
Okay.
to. He sold those, he just developed the land.
Okay.
He's building the condos that are on Kirby.
Uh-huh.
That's the ones he said that they're gonna be more like, and if you go on, you can look on HAR, and they're listed on HAR, they're very modern looking. They don't look like the single family homes that you're talking about. Condos and retail. Yeah. So I just wanna be clear, because I thought you were talking about the single family homes.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, that's what, people have not liked the look of, I guess.
Some,
In defense of the builder though, you're seeing the back of the houses.
Yes,
When they
yes,
build the
exactly.
front,
That's what we're
front of
gonna see is
the
the,
houses, people's backs right now, like, once they build the rest of it, you'll see all the front of the houses. And
yeah.
that's all you'll see, it'll be a totally different look
okay.
in 9 months. In defense of the builder, they're not mine anyway, but still.
I understand, yeah, I just wanted, see, I don't know that I wouldn't drive down my own street and see the back of all these houses too, so that's a question.
So Mayor, we have a moment.
Yep. No, any other comments? Any other?
Z keeps telling me
The comments were made, the discussion was held, give them a minute and a second.
Yeah, but isn't that when we talk?
Yeah.
Oh, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. This is a particularly difficult location. We've had a number of different businesses that have tried to be there, including what I know you looked at earlier, which was a bar. And one that just did not fit, that there were a lot of complaints for noise and everything there, even though we would love to have a good meeting place with libations. But there's like, as you found, there's safety issues underneath. There's a lot of conflicts beneath. So I really applaud you taking it on. It's one of the really eyesore areas for Nassau Bay.
Yeah, actually, we met with Chief over there when we looked at the bar, and he quickly told us we're not going to.
I think it was the decimal meter
I warned you too. I warned you. I can go back that far. So, yep. Okay. Next is the discussion action, the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Nassau Bay adopting a policy recovering costs incurred to respond to public information requests from a single requester in a 12-month period that exceeds 36 hours of personnel time or that exceeds 15 hours of personnel time in a 1-month period, repealing entirely ordinances previously adopted in conflict herewith, and providing for finding of fact and act on exceptions, governing law, codification, proper notice of meeting. This is the first reading, so this is 2 readings. Any comments here?
No, we need this, and you should pass this. We have one of these, maybe more.
What's the actual rates now, how do they determine the rates of what people would have to pay for access?
Chris, you actually worked on this extensively, what is this?
So the rates you're discussing are promulgated by the Attorney General. There's a handout that I sent that it has a laundry list of,
Like a
per
standard
page, what type of form it is produced in, but that's the direct answer.
Any other questions or comments?
I just would like to note that this is perfectly aligned with the Public Information Act handbook for cost provisions regarding requests requiring a large amount of personnel time, as well as the Texas Local Government Code. So when I cross-referenced with those, it was very consistent. I supported to have that.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the most we can do. It's the most we can do under the existing law.
It actually delineates, it was, written by the AG's office by the state of Texas. So with that, we're following 100% of the law.
Correct.
Do I hear a motion? Moved by Don to approve, second by Lucy. Any further comment? Oh, it's just the first reading. Excuse me. First reading. then we will hold this over till next meeting. Next is a discussion on code enforcement. And these are 3 topics. These are, you'll see that it's 18410 Kingstown Court, otherwise known as the Jamison property, the 1910 NASA Parkway, which is the Arafat property, and the 2002 San Sebastian Court is the Sapphire Bay House. Okay, did you want to start?
Sure, you want me to start with the Kingston Court? Several things happened on this. First of all, we've had some, unfortunately, we've lost the key personnel in the building department. She's been very helpful and she's gone elsewhere. We had confusion on the part of the contractor as to the power pole that was requested. Our building department had indicated that there were certain criteria they needed to meet, and that wasn't communicated very well. They've now met them all, they've made their application complete, and I think everybody's focused and ready to say, okay, let's be sure we're focused in the right direction. Mayor, we've had a good response to the call that I made to talk to the lawyer saying, you gotta take this seriously and let's get it underway. And I think they're on stream with us. We're gonna have a meeting with them, but it doesn't look like we need a meeting now, we just need to get on with this business, and that's what we're gonna do.
So this came out of just for council and the folks, that there's been nobody really seen at the Jamison property. And that was concerning because there's a clock, for those who don't know, there's a contract involved that has a scope of work and a time frame. And we didn't want to get into where at the end of the contract that they missed their deadline. So we pushed the envelope to say, okay, look, we see, deviating, and asked for a meeting, wanted to get an update, which they then responded properly. I'll give them credit here, kudos. I believe you're gonna see things in the next 24, 48 hours where there'll be actual work. My belief is they're gonna start with generators. They may or may not do a T-pole. And so just be aware. And folks, please be my eyes and ears there too. I very much appreciate that. And we will work it. We're gonna make sure this property gets done right.
Mr. Mayor, if I can please, I would like to let you know the dumpster had been removed. A smaller dumpster is there. Fence boards have been replaced, albeit not very many of them. So there has been some progress.
They did but it's been pretty dead there for a while.
It has.
So that's
Well, they had a little bit of vandalism, they told me that today, or yesterday, that they were, had vandalism, there was some kind of a fence that isn't there yet, but it'll be there. So I think they're headed in the right direction, so are we, so I believe we're back on track.
Mr. Mayor, if I can please also, I would like to also, let the council know that, in sharing this information, I was contacted by a resident in Nassau Bay that personal information for one of the owners was shared directly inside of the packet. I would like to ensure that personal information is redacted within inside of these things for, the residents.
I'll get with you, but more specific after the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. Chief, anything else?
No.
Chief, anything on Arafat property or anything on that one?
So I've been in discussion with Mr. Gregg, our counsel on this. There was an SUP amended back in April of 2018. I know there was discussion with you and I in reference to an RV on the property. We have done the best to determine that nobody's living in that RV while it's on the property. The officers have kept watch on it. We actually had one of the officers go out and talk to Mr. Arafat, and there's no indication anybody's actually living on the RV. And looking at our ordinances, the RV, where it sits right now, is within our codes. Parking is located between the base building line and the pavement edge of the street. It isn't there, it has to be in operating conditions and stuff, so we know it's in operating conditions because they have electrical cords, so. There are some issues with the SUP. There were some things that were removed in the original SUP in the April 2018 meeting, looking back at the notes, and I think Mr. Gray can speak to this.
Some were removed, but others were left intact or modified, so we went forward, we went backwards. So we have a current document that has requirements for them, and they need to meet those requirements.
And as of right now, looking at it, they do meet those requirements, the fencing that's around the property.
What, is there any time restriction for RVs being able to be stationed on that property or any kind of facility that have to be in?
No, not according to the SUP and not to the building code, no.
We're trying. So, any? Anything else?
No, sir, not to report.
And then lastly, anything on the Sapphire?
There's been a lot of movement on the Sapphire property in the last year since March of 2022, when the new ownership took over. Asden Properties, Mandy Smith is the property manager, and I've asked her to attend tonight. She can give you an update on everything that's been occurring. If the council would like to hear from Ms. Smith, she can update everything that they've been doing out there. Quite a bit of work's going on.
I'm gonna allow it.
I know there's also a question about some of the shoring it's around the backside because of some, and she can address that also, things that are going on. So.
Hi, I'm Mandy Smith. I'm the property manager at the Sapphire, and I know that property is worth in this community. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I agreed to take the job at that property. I didn't know the history of it, and it has been the most stressful and most rewarding experience in my career. So we bought the property in 2022, and we hit the ground running and haven't stopped. When I learned the history of the property, my hopes soon began to be bring it back to its former glory of the stories that I've heard from it. And I know that I can get there. It's just gonna take time and it's gonna take money. And thankfully I work for a company that has money. We buy properties and we hold them. So it's not something that we're gonna sell anytime soon. We like to flip them. So far, we have spent over $4 million in the property, $1.8 million on the property and apartment maintenance, and $2.4 million on capital improvements. My team and I have taken the occupancy from 28% occupied when we bought it last year. We're now 80% occupied, and we've taken the Google reviews from 1 star to 3.5 stars. I have a whole page of stuff that I've done, but I know y'all probably have questions.
I'd love to hear that.
Okay, just wanted me to read the what I've
Yeah,
done? Okay. So, the first item that I addressed was the staff. I hired a full staff of experienced employees, and we've maintained that staff for over a year, except for a housekeeper. It took me some time to find the right person for that job, but we have it now, and my property stays clean. The next item that I addressed was the residents living at the property and their safety. Several residents had no active lease agreement, and several more were not paying rent. All past due rents were forgiven when we bought the property. And starting 4/1 gives the opportunity to sign a new lease and start paying rent or move out with no penalty. We also gave the residents the option to transfer to a new apartment, one that was in complete working order. We took, I had 20 residents take me up on that offer. We had 4 apartments with squatters living there, surrounding apartments and all over the area, using our pools and laundry rooms. With the help of Nassau Bay Police and the Justice of the Peace Corps, we were able to remove all the squatters and have not experienced any since. We've hired a courtesy officer to live at the property. She's an HPD officer who walks the property several times, daily updates, and if a resident calls after hours needing help, she's on call. We have installed 230 cameras throughout the property and replaced all of the push open panic doors. The next safety project is to complete a new key fob entry system. The next item we addressed was the fire alarm and sprinkler system. We hired a company called Nation's Best Fire Protection who made several repairs to the fire alarm system and got everything up to code so we could pass our inspection.
Has that inspection happened?
Yes, and we passed. This happened again this year. We fixed the chillers and hot water boilers. The reason that I was 28% occupied when we bought that property is the chiller wasn't working. So nobody had air. And so everybody left. It took us 1 day to get it working. It just cost money that the previous owners and previous owners and previous owners of that property didn't have. My residents have not been out without air or hot water since we bought the property. Another issue we addressed were we had 3 units that had mold and mildew due to water damage caused by roof and plumbing leaks that, again, the previous owner didn't have money to fix. I called an EPA, National Restoration Services. They viewed the water damages in all 3 units and informed me that the areas needing repair were less than 10 square feet, so I could legally and ethically have the damaged areas repaired by my maintenance team. Using proper PPE, my maintenance team removed damaged sheetrock, wrapped it in plastic, put it in our rented roll-off dumpster, and then they repaired the units. The next items we addressed were pest control. I'm just gonna read through this one real quick. Pest control, remodeling, painting, landscaping. We repaired the broken mailboxes in both buildings. We repaired sheetrock, crown molding, baseboards in the hallways in both buildings, stairways, and laundry rooms. We made exterior repairs to the siding, the roofs, the gutters, the carports, and the patios. We tore down old cabanas and rebuilt new ones. We painted the entire building inside and out. We replaced the lighting inside and out. We remodeled the office. We have 40 renovated units that were not included in previous renovations by previous owners of the property. All of them have needed main framing and plumbing replacements, costing us between $10,000 and $15,000 per unit. In May 2022, we spent $20,000 to trim the trees because they were in really bad shape. This past Friday, May 5th, I spent another $8,000 to have the trees trimmed again. I have 2 big projects, this is the end of it. I have 2 big projects that we're currently working on. One of them is the elevators. We have 4 of them, only 2 of them work. And the 2 others that do work, the interior cabs, are not in great condition. We've hired new elevators to modernize the 2 elevators that don't work and replace the interior cabs on all 4. Currently, they are 50% complete with the modernization of 2 elevators, and the complete project should be done by the end of June. The total the total cost to replace them and repair the cabs is $373,000. Foundation repairs, this is my last one. So I know that we had the alarm went off because of a belt in one of the dryers, and Tony, the chief, or the fire marshal, noticed that we had some shoring in the back of the building. Well, we found out recently that we have a small area of our carport on the east side of the building in the back is, it's failing. The little carport, the posts they're not supporting the building. So what we did is we had a geotechnical engineering company come in and do all kinds of boring and testing to find out why these posts are failing. And what they determined is that there is a large sewer drain hole right there. And that, I have pictures, that drain was backed up for maybe 10 or more years. And it caused these metal posts to erode. So what we're gonna do, this area is only affecting 2 apartments. It's a small area. It's affecting 2 apartments. Those apartments are vacant. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna jack up the building. We're gonna put 9 new posts and new footings under these posts. Engineering company is doing all of the work. We're gonna get all of the permits pulled, and the 2 apartments that are vacant are gonna stay vacant until the project is complete. I have extensive reports from the geotechnical engineering and the engineering firm that is going to fix the property, telling me that it's just those 2 units that are affected. I don't need to vacate the premises, and they'll get the work done, and that's it. So I know that my property has been an eyesore and has a bad reputation, but I want to guarantee you guys that it is making progress, and it will make progress. And it's going to be a great place to live. I want the council members who lived there with their families when they first moved here to have their kids move there. I want it to be that again, and I'm going to try.
How much have you spent in reinvestment for the facility in total?
In total, over $4 million.
Over $4 million?
Yes.
And your occupancy rate now?
80%.
80%.
Yes.
I have a personal request.
Absolutely.
I've had a tour of the facility a couple of years ago.
Come have another one.
I would like to have a tour if you would please.
Yes, and I have pictures here. I have before and after pictures, what we've done so far. Just these pictures on paper, not the best quality paper, they're still mind blowing. But come take a look, please.
I'd like to have a tour also. I had some people call me last week to go out there because I'm not sure why this keeps happening. You know where the cars parked underneath the building?
Yes,
The ceiling up above keeps failing.
yes.
And it's like sheet rock goes on and then it fails again and it gets painted and it fails again and yet. And the last time I was there was a week ago, the wood is completely rotted and mildew. It looks like it's gonna collapse.
Yeah.
What's the plan to fix that?
So that's an ongoing situation. We have galvanized piping. It's built in the 60s. So the piping runs through these carports, unfortunately. So what we're having to do is, as a leak, we fix it. The next one springs a leak, we fix it. And it's with a property with galvanized piping, it's gonna cost $1 million to fix it, and it's gonna take a year, but it'll get better.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question, please? So I'm sure you're aware that we have some residents that came and presented to us in regards to ventilation. Now, I
Yes.
understand the chiller, I understand the hot water.
Right.
In Texas,
Yes,
when both of those are off, you know what happens, right?
absolutely.
Okay, so I'm concerned about how you're monitoring the ventilation system throughout the buildings.
Okay. I want to say something real quick in regards to the residents that came in. One of them was a previous employee of mine. So that's
Okay.
a little bit of disgruntled situation there, but when you have an air filter that's not supposed to go, that wasn't a standard air filter. And then you put a dryer sheet over that air filter, what you're gonna do is cause a lack of suction, and that's gonna cause more mildew growth. I mean, that's just,
Right.
you know,
Maybe to build on.
So I'm gonna tell you my age here. So I delivered the Citizen newspaper there when I was in intermediate school.
Okay.
And it dates me really bad.
yeah,
And I'm telling you that at that point in time, going through the building newspapers, it smelled of mildew. And it was that was in the late 70s.
oh, wow.
So I'm concerned about monitoring of that within the ventilation system because that age of the building.
Yeah, it is not the ventilation system, it's the airflow. So you have this property that's built up like an apartment complex. When, like a hotel, I mean, when that hotel is running at 100% capacity and everybody's air is on, then you have good flow.
It's bound to look.
Right, when you have a high percentage of people that are not living there and their air is not flowing, it causes, okay, the
How
science
are
of
you
it.
taking care of that for the 20% that is not in residence and the air is not flowing?
So we've got all of them on, even if they're vacant. We have every single one of those units on, all the time.
Didn't hear whether or not cleaning out those ventilation
That's
systems was
Yes.
part of your renovation of your.
Yes,
you.
absolutely. So we're replacing a lot of the inside units, and the ones that don't need replacing, we are cleaning. And those residents that came up and spoke, I offered to have their air ducts cleaned.
I'm talking to other residents, so this
Okay.
is before.
Yeah, I've
this
seen
is
other
part-
residents.
Anybody that needs their air ducts cleaned can have them cleaned, like residents that have lived there before we took over. If they don't live there before we took over, we got that taken care of before they moved in.
And to be fair, she came to talk to us before you fired her. She told us that.
I didn't
She
fire her.
wasn't the only one.
I didn't fire her.
She was she wasn't the only one. There was like 4 or 5 other people, like what Jane said, that I saw inside their apartment that were really bad building problems. And you're saying that that's been all rectified now.
Yes.
Hey, Phil, are we allowed to ask questions? Is this a public forum
No,
or
This
just?
is not a
council?
public.
Mayor and council, just an
You
addition.
want my email address?
2 additional is that the parking lot, if you look at it right now, it's got some plates. Part of the renovations was complete redo of the chiller system piping underground. That's been repaired. The management company has already applied for a asphalt overlay permit, and that's in our court right now because of the building official. I can tell you that Ms. Smith and Vinnie Checklist with the one of the owners managers have us to get, because they don't like the way it looks right now. So they're pushing us, and that's in the building department, so, those things are being looked at, but that's being held up by the city. And just to reiterate, working with law enforcement, the crime index numbers that we have for the apartment complexes that all the council is familiar with. I will give you just a real quick snapshot that back in 2020, this property was 136% of the baseline threshold for the city. So they were above the numbers. In 2021, working with management, we had gotten that number down to 72, and this last year, their number is 51% of the baseline numbers for crime index, for the crimes that occurred on the property. So just did that, but I think that's all we have to present.
I have one last question for you. What's your policy about short-term rentals if you have somebody there renting out an apartment or short-term rental on Airbnb? Do you have a policy on that?
Oh, no, we don't allow it.
You don't?
No, not at all. I actually had somebody recently come and ask me to lease 8 apartments in mine so they could do that, and I said, I don't want to get out of my office.
Okay, just checking.
So if one is discovered there, how would you?
I would file
suggest that?
eviction immediately.
So-
Yeah, it's a violation of lease, yeah.
So, to Ms. Weller's question, and I know that was brought up about some of the, discussion that we've had about short-term rentals, and some of them appear to be at the property. I did talk to Ms. Smith about that, a couple of weeks ago, and they are reviewing available options on the different short-term rental sites, and looking at the pictures that are posted, they can tell that those are not actually their apartments.
You're talking about Bay House or?
They're all at Bay House. I've actually talked to the manager about.
They're all at Bay House, but I was just curious what their policy was, yeah. They're all at
And
Bay House.
again, I'm looking at this as the chief knows, this code enforcement, particularly on the STR, is a priority.
Yes.
So if there's a limitation for us to be able to enforce subleasing, that's really your bailiwick, not ours.
Yeah.
Which was the essence of my question, which
Okay.
is if we do understand that there is one, what is the process to be able to handle that eviction?
So you would serve them with a 3-day notice to vacate?
To you?
No, I would serve
Yeah,
them. If
okay.
you let me know that there was one, or if I found out there was one, I would serve them with a 3-day notice to vacate, and I would have them out for 3 to 4 weeks. Pardon, pound with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is your fire pump working?
Is my fire pump working? Yes.
How often do you do that?
How often do I test the fire pump?
Fire pump is still on there.
I don't know that I've ever tested the fire pump. I'm not sure what the fire, I mean, my alarms,
No, the fire pump should do an automatic pressure drop.
the sprinkler system.
The deluge system.
Yes, we check the sprinkler system quarterly.
We have a policy of notifying the insurance company or us if it's out of service for you.
I'm not sure if I can find out for you.
Know what you want, but it's out of service.
Okay.
If you can send that information to me, I'll make sure to get it over to council.
Absolutely.
I will be here next week.
Yes, you will.
No.
Just real quick, a quick question in regards to public safety on this. Chief, I appreciate that we've gotten below that threshold, but still on majority of the incidents and calls are inside of the areas in the apartments. And so as much as it's done to a certain threshold, I think there's a lot more we can be doing.
Absolutely. Everything that I listed, it's just been a year. It's been 1 year since we started. I can't wait to talk to you guys in a year from now, and those numbers will be even lower. I run a pretty tight ship.
I think quarterly.
Okay, let's do it. This has been entertaining. I'll come back.
We actually call it the point
I'll say it.
Really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm not-
Any other questions, any other comments?
Thank you for
Mandy, thank you very much.
Mandy, I just want to say thank you. I know how hard you worked since the last year with that and the length of time it told you to tell me everything you guys have planned on doing. And I just want to say congratulations on what you've done.
Thank you.
Next is discussion action to support the House Bill 9, the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund. No, Ashley, you were the one who actually, I believe, wanted this on. Did you want to talk about this, or Chief, did you want to talk? Dina?
I don't see it in the packet.
No, sir, I didn't have anything to add, it's not in your packet.
It was sent by one of our advocates for expanding the Texas.
It was sent by one of our advocates that was speaking of.
My understanding, and it's here, is this was to have us collaborate or actually be a part of a letter
Correct.
that would be sent in order to be able to enhance the broadband infrastructure for areas that aren't there, that would have state funding in order to do that.
Correct.
Is what I understood.
And I believe Brad did send that out to all of council. I do not see that in the packet at this point though, so we may have to,
Did you know if there's a deadline for that?
I don't, but I can ask.
Because I'm wondering if we should table it until we have that, or,
Mr.
I think
Mayor,
we're gonna have to.
yeah, that's what, can I ask if, as long, I just want to make sure, I didn't know if there's a deadline.
so just so everyone's aware, that this is a House bill that's been put forward to the state legislature of the state of Texas, which means that every 2 years, we have this session. And what that means is that if it goes from committee out, it'll be voted on. And so if we table this, the support for that will be at the next meeting that we have. And session could wind down if they get through everything that they've done. I just want to highlight that as it depends on how many things are in committee and how much is pushed out. And that's important for everyone to understand. And if I understand this correctly, this is only a letter of support that we are putting forward with others from around our community to support the broadband initiative.
Then I
Yeah,
would,
it sounds like this needs to be, within the week there.
then I'm going to allow something here. Alex, do you have the answer to that as to, is there?
I do, Mayor. The last day of the legislative session is May 29th. So
Yes.
anything after that point would probably
Would be moot.
Thank you very much, Alex, I appreciate it.
So as long as we can vote on this and still be in compliance without this being in the
I
packet. I
would,
agree.
that'll be in June though.
We're having a meeting. We have a canvassing meeting next week, is it possible to then?
No, because that only needs to have two, we may not have a four.
we wouldn't have a forum.
Let me say it this way, I actually think from the things here that this would be this type of activity for broadband infrastructure. And it's just a letter, it's not committing any funds, and from that standpoint, I would like to entertain a motion to approve this so that we can participate in that regard.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to motion that we approve support for House Bill 9, the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund.
Yep, do I hear a second? Second by Ashley. Any other further comment? Oh,
No, I just want to make sure, since it's just a support letter, there's no possible adverse impact on agenda items.
Should not be any problem.
Then I call for the vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Next item is the discussion City Hall security. I think, James, this is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. As everybody might be aware, if you watch the news around the country, seems to be a weekly event of something happening across this nation. And it's very unfortunate because what we would consider the unthinkable has become expected. And really, that's nothing that anybody should have to deal with. So with that, one of the things that Mayor and myself, I saw just walking up, if you know, you come into the lobby, you see Robert. Robert's great as long as he's not wearing a mask, but he's dark, and that's for COVID. Another piece of it is that we have the Avalon system, I think it is. Tiffany has access to that from the police part of the building and the department, and you can see the cameras, and Robert can see that he has to have the cameras up. And so we had a situation here, everyone, I'm not sure if you're familiar with someone came firstly, they're called sovereign citizens. They don't believe in the law. They don't believe that they fall underneath that. And there was a situation where we had several officers in a council meeting. And I commend Chief for bringing all those guys in, because I think that was a great job on that part. But, one of the days coming back down after that event, one of them was actually sitting in their vehicle out front here, and how they sat was not like I'm sitting in my car. They were sitting out, like they were going to grab something and maybe come into the building. So I contacted, contacted Brad, with that, and really then I started looking at particularly what happened in Memphis. And that is tied to, someone coming into a facility. You guys can still see me, I'm just hazing on the camera, so, and making sure that we're protected. We have a magnetic system, on the doors as you're wearing out the car to get in. The other part is, to look at how we can protect those people that are at the forefront of our community. The door down there, looking at potentially ballistic, glass, because I don't know if you know or not, you look at where Lacey sits in municipal court, that's plexiglass, and that isn't even all the way up to the top of the ceiling, so it wouldn't do anything. And it's something I don't think we ever thought we would have to do, but the times have changed, and so that's why I felt it very important that everyone that works in this building deserves the ability to work without any type of threat. And so that was my concern, and looking at having a security audit for the building here to make sure that all the employees feel comfortable and if there are any issues that we were protecting the people in our city. Thank you, Randy.
Yes.
We have a plan in place and training for employees.
We have a plan in place for one, I'm sorry.
There's a plan in place at City Hall, what we do that for sure.
We are scheduling training, the CRACE training for our employees here, which is the Citizens Response Active Shared events. We've been rolling that out to our business and community to get that information to them, and working with HR to get something scheduled so we give that same training to our people here in-house. And then after that, we plan, once we get our people trained, then we will be doing a public training of that same CRACE instruction, which goes along with alert training that the officers have. It's developed by the same personnel. I can tell you that we can look at the security audit. The City Hall security has been a discussion for a while now. That came up while we were discussing during COVID and putting up the barriers for the COVID, for protection of transmission of the disease. And when we started, at that time, we started looking at some of the options internally, not with a security audit. Without going into a lot of details, simply putting up bulletproof glass is not going to be affected by itself, and I don't want to go into details of why. If any of the council wants to have an offline discussion one-on-one, I'll explain it to you.
But just to follow up a little bit, is there a defined security plan for this building? For
Mr. Mayor, please.
Well, I just asked a question.
Not this time.
So, Mr. Mayor, Chief, I appreciate that previous during COVID, there was a thought to do this. I don't want to wait. I'd like a security audit. I'd like a security audit for the building. I don't care if it's ballistic glass. I want to make sure that the people that work in this building, everyone feels safe, and that we don't, if there is ever an issue, that they're protected. And that's what I'd like to have. I would like this not to lead on for several months. I'd like to put a schedule for audit in place as soon as possible, because what happened up at the outlet mall in Allen, you don't know what is going to happen.
We will look at that and see what's available.
What would you need in order to help facilitate that, Chief?
I think right now we're looking at whether something like that, having an audit, the cost of the audit, and if that's budgeted. So we would have to look at it. Other than that, right now, I think that would be, once we get an audit in here and we get recommendations, then we can look at that. But once the first step is to get the audit done, and we have to see what that cost is and where that is.
One of the things here, and I was going to suggest is, or I should say highlight, is we've got about $140,000 of unallocated funds to be able to do priorities.
We'll go ahead and spend it.
Yep, so, but I guess the point of
No.
structuring that 6-month review was, I was also gonna have the council, you know, as well as the new people who are soon to be elected, and as well as the people outgoing, kind of give what are the top 2 priorities, and kind of aggregate that. If there's police security, you know, for this, you know, to get an audit.
Sure, one clarification, Mayor, one clarification, if I may. They, just so everyone's clear, they are, council members elect until they take their oath of office.
That's correct.
So, they've already gone through it, don't worry, welcome to the club. But I would like to say that, Chief, you know, we spent the funds for the active shooter, for the ballistic shields, helmets, the vests, the ARs that were required, which is fantastic. We got the Interceptor. I don't think it's here yet. Or have we got the new one?
And what?
Is the new one here, the new police?
Interceptor.
Yeah.
It's been built.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is on site. It's we are actually down to 4 units because our unit is replacing the shop that is being built out. So I was under the understanding it was going to be here last week. We don't have it yet. It should be here soon.
I would like to say that over the course of the past year, we have invested in the police force, and I'm cognizant of the service that you provide to the city, and I want to make sure that all of the officers and all the employees are protected, that they're safe, because we appreciate everything that they do. Keeping us operable.
I'm absolutely on the same page with you. We will make this, we will push this up the priority list. I can't promise you it'll be number 1, but we'll do that as close to number 1 as we can.
1.5. Sure. Oh,
Okay.
Anything else? We're gonna move on. 9.8, which is Charter Review Commission. This is mine. And this is, I wanted to put this on people's radar. We could wait a year before doing any type of revisions for our charter. It's done where it's reviewed every 5 years, and a committee is done. That's part of our it's actually in our charter how to do that, and it is my intention to do that early, because I've got some real concerns around the outdatedness and just the need to correct things, which I believe has caused a lot of the tribalism, if I can, quote that. And I've got 3 examples. Just some may or may not know, but we almost prevented somebody from their constitutional right to run for, based off of criteria that was deemed not part of state law back in 1996. So from that standpoint, we had 2 groups of people, the tribes, fighting back and forth because our charter should have been very clear. And each one had the basis of information, which was, we got to back our charter says this, it has been deemed not part of the law, and it created huge amount of emotion, drama, and charges of a whole variety of things. I meant what I said about, I really believe in our system. I think you made the comment about choice. But we almost, in this little town in America, almost kept somebody from running for an election. And I think we need to look at ourselves. More important, we got to fix it. And that's just one item. And that has caused a huge amount of emotions. The other is, and it was even said tonight, and Sarah, I appreciate the conversation you and I had. There are two pieces of information. There are people on this council and other who actually has served on the special events committee. And actually it was Sandra Ham, when I first became mayor, told me that the special events committee is only one committee that's an advisory committee, and that it had to adhere to certain things. It did not apply to a city manager. That is not information that was presented to me, and that was the one, and I'll take responsibility. I'm the one who talked to Aaron. I'm the one who talked really primarily yourself, and relaying the information. I can't comment on some of the other ones because that's what I was working on, is that I had been charged with being a criminal for a walking quorum or for things like that as part of here, which had no basis. And I believe people have no things. But our charter is not well understood. We have three committees called a charter committee, an advisory committee, and ad hoc committee. And if I were to poll everybody here, I bet you nobody would get them right. And I think it's time that we really put down what we want to have as committee, what are the rules for those committees, and be able to make sure that they are properly agreed to in order to be a part of our charter. So again, I don't want to get into the thing here, but I believe there's a gap of perceptions that a city manager, and I'll use words that you asked me if I found out, is if a city manager erroneously mentioned that this was not a advisory committee of the city, that was wrong. And you guys may have operated in great faith doing that, but that was wrong.
Right.
And that was in the
You agree that when you then asked the special events committee to do those things, they started to do them, right?
That my understanding, that's why I was a little caught off guard, but there's emotion here right now. All I'm saying is I want to fix these things.
Right, but that did happen, right? They did comply.
They, my understanding is they did.
Okay.
That's what I understand.
Okay.
So what I just wanted to say is, and then one last example of why we are substantially deficient in sexual harassment policies. We had a inappropriate relationship that this council had to deal with. It wasn't anything around issues other than we had the number one and number two individual in this city in a relationship where people had, came forward to say it's uncomfortable. This is wrong. City staff, and we had to take action on that. I don't believe we should have any discrepancy around what should happen in a sexual harassment type situation. It should be very clear in our charter. And I believe if it was more clear, there would be a lot less of the discussion around, what should or shouldn't happen in those ones. I could keep going. But my point is, I would like to next council meeting, my intent is to have it as a workable. I want people to get refreshed on what that is. I think we need to think about who we want to have on that. A great means by which to help bring people together. And I think if these things are clarified and are agreed upon, quote, the rules of the game, people don't think it's ambiguous or using two sets of data. It'll be much easier and you just follow the rules. If I quote somebody who she knows I'm talking about, just follow the rules. And that would be my intent.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, real quick, what's important inside of this also is that people understand that we are what they call home, and there are general law cities. And so with that, our charter basically is like our constitution. And depending on which is more stringent, we have to follow those laws, whether the state trumps us or we trump the state. And so that's part of the reason why looking at some of these things that are in place in the charter do need to be reviewed. What y'all might not be aware of is that there are House bills up at the legislature right now that would take away some of those things from us as a home rule city. And so that's important that everyone understands that they're being pushed through by certain people that are out of the committee, which means coming up on these dates that we voted on. But that's important. So everyone needs to understand what we operate as, how we operate, and our impact charter. The difference is, but prior to our incorporation, we were a general law city. And then the founders actually turned us into and Dick, I think you could speak to that.
Well, you incorporated the general law city, and then we adopted the charter, and after that, with charter election, on the whole 9 yards, changed the method of government. You still have to follow state law. If the state says you can't do something as a city, then even a home rule city can't do it. But a general law city has to look to the matrix of laws to see if they have the power where we can make our own laws and that's prohibited by the state. So it's a very, very different type of concept. That's all we're, it's important.
It's very cool because that means you have a voice in what we're doing as a city. And that's why I think this review and this discussion that we have is very important.
Mayor, can I make a comment? Just for point of clarification, that staff has an annual sexual harassment training every year, presented by SGR, the same company that's doing our search for the city manager. So we do have those policies in place. So I understand that there was a gap missing in this particular incident, but there is training that goes on with staff, and I think because of that training, staff brought that to light.
But I'm really trying to.
Sure. I just want to
We need to
clarify.
do more than that because
Yes, sir.
there's a gap.
If you're talking about a policy revision, and then you're talking about a charter change, which would be a stronger, control than just a policy change.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
If I remember correctly, any of the changes that are proposed by the Charter Commission have to be voted on?
They absolutely could.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody knows that.
So
These will be
there,
voted on.
if, what this would mean if we did this a year early, rather than having the referendum as, you know, if there were changes as part of the normal way process, we would probably, on the, we'll call it May 6th of 2024, there would be a referendum on the changes to be approved by the voters.
Correct.
And lastly, I'll say kudos to you for volunteers that you want to support this effort.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. The next item, and probably why most everybody's here, this is the fun one. The discussion and action, the city of Nassau Bay to determine responsibility of maintaining the duck feeders and the collection of funds. And let me take a crack at this because as I heard everybody, you know, talk, there was one person who I believe had the most amount of information rather than, and I'm going to use tribalism again, rather than just saying what their position was. And I want to give that to Angela Braun. And I appreciate that. You had more information all around, and I'm gonna paraphrase and correct me if I'm wrong. I'll allow it, but let me just. I think there's two issues here, and people tend to just talk past each other, and I don't want to do that. And I believe the interim city manager. What Roscoe you were talking about, it wasn't that he was he wanted to have this discussion, but it was of his opinion that this was really a city responsibility. He went and talked to Gail Nelson, he went and talked to Can-B. They said that there are certain things here, and he said, well, we need to have some sort of memorandum of understanding. There's nothing written, nothing approved, nothing at all here. And to go into some of the stuff with Angela, there were funds of the feeders themselves that were paid for by Can-B, and there were things that were paid for by the city and installed by the city. So the ownership of them is quite honestly murky. It is not one or the other. There's funds on either one. So that is what I've seen, and what I see as the two issues is from revenue being generated from city property. This is a, as somebody mentioned, a 501c3, which is independent. And while Can Be and the duck feeders, I don't know of anybody who doesn't want them. It's there. But the question comes in is, they're a friend. What happens if there are 501c3s that want to do things to raise revenue on our city property at their discretion, not ours? How do we maintain oversight of that? We've had other businesses that have come in that because we do have that, we've been able to stop them. And there's the view that we got to make sure the city maintains that authority to be able to do that. And that's a valid issue. The other issue is we want to make sure that we have duck feeders and that our volunteers are properly doing that, and that we are doing it in a concise fashion. And if a group like Can Be wants to do that, we should have a policy. We should agree that there should be a memorandum of understanding, which, to Angela's correctness, there were attempts to try to do that. Some was on vacation. Some of that was my wife and I were moving into a house and got about 24-hour notice of a board. And if I were to ask for a motion, which I'd like to see, is one that would be consistent to have both those things occur. That we maintain the right of the city to be the oversight of that, and that unless there's a MOU that is in place, which I believe there is, talking to Gail, talking to the Hortons, I believe there's a. So I'd like to say pending an MOU to be done in the next 30 days or so, because I think we just need to get it right, because there are issues. I call it casual, I'll use Gail's, it's casualness on how we've worked that is causing people to be tribal, to fight. So let's clean it up. And that's what I would like to see on this issue.
Who do you need?
So is this a motion that the city's gonna take care of the duck feeders?
No.
But then I don't know how you don't do both.
I'm going to, in 30 days, the city and Can Be have to work it out. But I want to do the liability of these things. There's some confusion. It's your call that, but who's going to have to drive us or Can? That's why you need the memorandum of understanding. That's the vehicle.
It's not clear.
Mayor?
City owns the park, and the city can control who operates in the park. City may not own these duck feeders. If we don't own them, we can't take them away. If we do own them, we can do what we want with them. It has to be hashed out, but you need a contract between the city and this entity, and thank them for doing what they've done, and see what we can do. I said about several months ago, this thing first came up, reasonable people can work this thing out. There's no reason why it can't be done. And I think it should be. We need to put this to bed. It's silly.
Mayor, if I may, as the only council member who's also on the board of trustees for Can Be. Don, if I'm understanding your motion right, it's probably something similar to the one I was going to make. That I think the most respectful and appropriate course of action at this point would be to table this discussion until a full conversation can be had between either the mayor or all of council with Can Be, so that we can discuss the memorandum of understanding that has already been created and is waiting to be discussed with the city. I think we can find a lot of clarification there and continue to work in good faith with each other. So the motion to table this for 30 days. I'll second. Okay.
My understanding is I think Can Be is very much wanting to, they said they've begun a draft of an MOU, and Gail was very much of the opinion that we just need to sit down and talk, that this has not been a discussion since almost 4 years, 5 years or so, that this is an area we just need to be precise on.
then I'll make the motion officially. Mayor, I'd like to move that we table this discussion until further conversation can be had.
I have a point of order, would be there's a
There's a
motion
motion on the floor.
for that.
I'll second Don Matter's motion.
Second by Michelle. Is there any
Can I have
further?
the motion repeated, please?
My motion is that within 30 days, can be, and the city council related to the mayor, city manager, county board, work out the whole 9 yards, but include also who has liability for what. If you guys are for something that was from your organization, somebody breaks their neck or kills himself, so you're going by ours. That's all it is. Really like a concession agreement, like the city of Houston has at the airport. You know, I can't go out there and sell hamburgers, but if the city of Houston gives us a permit, and then the memorandum of understanding, this is what this is, and that's where we need to be talking about. What are the responsibilities of both parties, and who's got liability for what? That's what we should have had all along, indeed.
And it is my desire to make sure that the city does not lose the ability to generate it from city properties, unless there's an MOU or something in place that says and contains that, because we lose our ability to enforce if we're not careful.
Would there be,
Moved by, well, go ahead.
I do have a question, would there be a person, like one person on Campy that we can make sure that everyone's happy with the agreement, so that 30 days is very reasonable?
Yeah.
So who's drafting the?
We already have a memorandum of understanding drafted.
Could I say that?
We've just been pending an opportunity to present that to council in a way that is fair and not.
Right now, it would be, the motion would be to have the city manager and myself be the point to negotiate. And what I heard from Gail was that she was wanting to have the Hortons as well as the other board members be part of that. Not a big group, but I'm just telling you what she said.
Point of inquiry, if I can, I believe the kind residents, the Hortons, have pushed that away too, I believe, visibly.
But all I know is, I wish we had done this earlier. I think a lot of people who are putting out information are trying to exaggerate things which are really tribal rather than real. And I want to make sure, because I'll tell you this for the duck feeders, my biggest issue with prior to the duck feeders was a safety issue with people feeding feeding birds, going all the way, coming on the road and get run over. And people drive fast, there's kids there, there's birds there. That's where a lot of birds got hurt, and having them by the pavilion, by the dock is a good location to control that. Royce, and Jim DeForest, they've been pushing me that the feeders have been creating a whole lot of pitches, and I agree with them. So there's got to be some broader things, because birds, when they eat food, they multiply. So in any event, that's we got a motion, we got a second. Any more?
Sure, point of inquiry. Because I just want the MOU side, just for clarity, I would like to ensure that the liability of the duck, if something goes wrong, someone gets sick, whatever. I'm not sure if the city is aware that there is an avian influenza outbreak, and that's a zoonotic disease that has now gone from animal to human, and so that's something we need to be aware of. So I want to make sure that those are covered inside.
I think we're foolish to think that if there's any liability there, that the city's not going to be named in any type of event.
And in defense of as the chairman of the Parks Committee, in defense of the entire committee who voted that it should go straight to the city, one of the concerns is that a lot of people were coming to us and saying, who's taking the money out of the duck feeders? I think they were believing like they were looking for a Nassau Bay Public Works person to be doing that. And they were concerned that, it wasn't somebody like that, and they didn't know who was taking that money, how much had been taken, and so on. So I think that needs to as well.
I call for the motion, move to vote.
Mayor, if I may, I just want to clarify one thing that doesn't seem to be getting through to people. Every single dime above expenses that this Canby board has collectively worked for the city. We have volunteers that probably would accumulate about 200 years of volunteerism in the city. And every single dime that we work hard to make goes to this city.
I think
And I want to make sure that, because there seems to be some misconception about the city not receiving these funds.
Wait a minute.
so, yeah, go ahead then.
So just real quick, if I understand correctly from just dialogue from people who have driven this up here and information that's kind of been shared in relation to this, it's my understanding that this was put forward as per Mr. Lee coming to speak, and it was put forward back in March of last year. And that no action was taken from the previous council. My view is that these types of things need to be taken care of sooner rather than later. You let something fester for a period of time, there becomes problems, and I see that as a main issue. I would also like to stipulate, and I would like to be on the record for saying, it's my understanding, yes, it goes to the city. The designation is to the animal shelter. That is the designation. It goes to the animal shelter. That's what I understand it. I just like more clarity on that.
And that's where I say there's two issues, Ashley, is I don't take issue with anything that you said. I'm not of the opinion, to the contrary. But what I do know is just because that happens doesn't mean we don't keep a pedophile who wants to have a ice cream business and comes in and sets up on our property in order to be able to do that. And I don't want to do anything that would lessen our ability to control that. And to me, that has nothing to do with how well Canby serves Nassau Bay. They're two very different issues, and I want to make sure we don't do one at the expense of the other, either way. So that's my issue.
Call the motion again.
Yep, so call for the vote. So
Call for the vote.
I just was saying, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Thank you. And for those who have been involved with having the duck feeders, thank you. People like it. Okay. The next one, hang on a second, guys. The discussion and action regarding short-term rentals within the city limits of Nassau Bay. This one here, and if you look at the sponsor list, there's a number of different items that were 9 different ones. And to me, the things that, well, let me back up, guys, I'm rambling, I apologize. This takes 2 readings to be able to modify this ordinance. We've talked about some in the past, and I just want to make sure, at least on the fines that we're doing, that we can maximize the amount of fines for an STR, as well as I understand in some of these things here that we can not only do fines for people who don't register, but we can do fines for people who advertise for an unregistered property. And to me, I think those are both viable things to be able to put pressure on the people to comply to our rules. And then the other is Chief, we've talked about this, just how we can have more resources, or how we can do things that would enable us to discover unregistered STRs, because there were 26 or so that were identified, that only 4 were really known by the city.
56, Mayor, point of clarity.
Yeah.
So, this was brought up a couple of times to the council, and I'd like to thank Councilman Willard for bringing it up and highlighting it. And further some discussions, I was contacted by a resident of was next door to apparently one of these short-term rentals. And as such, I started looking into what ordinances are out there that we could look at. And lo and behold, Nassau Bay in 2020 passed an ordinance for STRs. The issue comes down to the enforcement of those STRs. And inside of that, what we have is my last count, which I shared with the mayor, was 56 STRs unregistered inside of the city of Nassau Bay. And with that, one of the incidents that occurred actually was apparently the renters had a police scanner. And they were aware when the police were going to come, and they were on their way, and they departed the home. And then when the police left, they came back. And we have a noise ordinance inside 9 p.m. to 9 a.m., which of course law maintenance guys don't pay attention to. I think everybody knows that. But those are not being enforced. So we have an ordinance that's been on the books for a long period of time. And with that, we have not, or previous councils have not enforced what we should be enforcing in regards to what is there. I'd like to note that within that is a $3,000 a day fine. And it's amazing to think what you can do, $3,000 a day for non-registered STRs.
I keep saying that will pay for the full-time job.
Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna be able to enforce $3,000 a day.
I'm just saying, but what I'm saying is that inside this, there was more ordinances passed, there's compliance that needs to be adhered to, and there's enforcement. And no matter what the fine is, the enforcement does not happen. Which means that we as a city, even that are longstanding or have just purchased a home, do not end up with an STR that's next to them that's unregistered with the city. That number one, we're losing the revenues that could be there. But number two is that inside of this, one of the requirements you have to look at the owner. You also have to have the name of the owner displayed on the outside of the home and parking, so that they know, and we know as somebody responds, that we have that information there. And I can tell you that the one home that I was made aware of has none of that. None of it.
The one that I stayed at had none of that. They didn't have a fire extinguisher. So, I mean, how many citations have you issued, Chief?
None that I'm aware of.
So one of the things I would like to suggest, at least consider, and I would certainly like to have a motion on it, is one, for a first reading, next council meeting, that we can add the additional fine or penalties if people market a unregistered STR.
Sure, the same limits a certain amount of
Right?
time.
I'm just saying, is that I'd like to know that. I'd like to know the true maximum penalties that we can do, whether it's, one time $50 or if it's $3,000 a day. What is that number? I would also like to know how we can increase the enforcement so that we can identify, those that are unregistered or marketing and unregistered, that we actually can bring enforcement there. And the last thing is, if you look on here, there's been a lot of legal work actually in the city of Houston, particularly on the corporate owned, non-owner occupied full-time STR. So that's where you have, it's not meant for anybody living in it. It's meant totally and 100% as an STR, and it's corporate owned rather than owner owned. So there's efforts, and I'd really like to know if it's been successful to label them as hotels, because that gives us additional latitude to have, you know, those type of hotel or restrict hotels in our residential area.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarity, if I may. The state of Texas identifies these, the state comptroller, Glenn Hager, actually identifies these as hotels they are responsible for paying tax.
A lot of it depends on how we define a hotel.
Understand,
Correct.
but understand that is defined also inside the comptroller's office too. So I think it's important that we do review this, and also that these ones that are, if they're not registered, we missed out on 3 years worth of revenue for the inspections, the maintenance, the ongoing.
There's only 4 registered.
And so I think that we need to ensure that, you know, we are not, if they're going to be, as decided, that we are actually making sure that we are receiving those funds for those beginning payments.
So you need to put it in a format that's a true ordinance form. It's not in that format yet. You couldn't pass it tonight with the first reading. Yeah, well, next time you do the first reading, but it would have to be an ordinance form. I want to be sure we don't have
We need a motion to.
Yeah, those are at least 4 I'd like to see, so that if people want more, I'm all ears, but those are at least the 4 that I think are actionable.
So I think that if I.
Hang on, Don, he was already started talking.
We know some 20+ guys in town, in business, making money. Can we give them a violation?
Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow.
16 of them are the same guy.
One word. Currently, I'm sorry.
That's not on the agenda.
I just want to clarify that ordinance that was passed in 2020 actually has the inspection costs, those things on that. So what's important here is that we go back and we review whether it's fit for purpose. But I just want to be on the record saying that there are 3 years of operation of illegal SCRs inside our community that we have not either had registration fees for, and we have not had the inspections for. And so I don't know whether we'll pass our inspection or not. I don't know. I don't think there
Well, I can tell you that from the research that I've done, there are 4 registered. And those don't have hot permits. I don't remember how many wrote that. They don't, none of them have hot permits, or they've been paying hot funds, or 2 of them, I guess, pay hot funds.
But again, that's what I'm saying about enforcement, right?
Yeah, that's
You're saying-
enforcement. You have
You're just
to,
saying, you already know something
Right.
anymore. And I'm saying, how do we need to have enforcement so we can keep doing and looking at it so that we never get in this situation again?
Someone who the money's business and stays there. Can just fire, burn down, kill.
Exactly.
I didn't even get out there for tomorrow morning. Do it right now. Got it. Why? Just why? Let me check for that. We'll be back tomorrow for another time.
I'll email you the guy's phone number of our chief, the one that owns 17 of them.
Welcome, Jim.
So I can say that the enforcement of the permits and the registration and the initial inspections are completed by the building department. As we all know, our building department is shorthanded. The life safety issues, their initial inspection and annual inspection conducted by Tony Russo, the fire marshal. So those are the 2 departments that are handling the STRs and the registration. I know when we started this ordinance, there was a company we were using that was supposed to be monitoring and forwarding the STRs, and I believe that information was, we were not getting full information, so we stopped utilizing that company to do the monitoring for us. So at this point, we've been just in
I agree with what you said. What we law, and in that case, I look at that as there's an ordinance they're not following. And I thought that would be the police would have to follow, where they're not following the law.
But it was with the building department and for the permits for the STR permits. with the building department, not the police department.
To issue them or to enforce or to give citation? If they're in violation, if we have a known entity violating the law, you say that's the building official's responsibility to go give them a citation?
Formally filled out by the building official for the purpose of making a charge. You handle it, it would go through you, and that's what also to get it properly filed. So that's the process.
I know in other cities, they do have the police enforce that.
Well,
And other
they're
cities.
involved, but they don't do the initial part with it like the building official does. Starts with the building official. That's what it's saying.
Yes, that's why it's designed here.
One, sorry, quick one minute. Understandably, there's a gap, and we've identified the gap. We've identified that there are potentially non-compliant or illegal activities occurring in the city. I would recommend, well, I can't really recommend anything because we're taking a vote on this, but just as one of the clarity is that we have the opportunity to issue a citation, and whether that comes from the building official or it comes from the police, is a citation. And it's my understanding that citation will then take them to municipal court. Am I wrong on that?
Right.
So I think that for 3 years of having something in place, and unfortunately, I don't know the circumstances because I was not here when there was a group that was overseeing this, but it's not been acted on.
Yeah, so let me say my 4 again, and I would entertain a motion that would address, how can we increase enforcement? Don says tomorrow, I'm saying I wanted, a solution so that we don't have such a violation of our laws in our city. Whether or not we can provide a penalty for marketing a property that is not registered, in addition to just the penalty we have for registration. What is the maximum penalty, so that we would be able to have that discussion for a first reading, as well as the legal ability to have corporate-owned, non-owner occupied, 100% STR properties listed as a hotel.
Two different problems. One is what's the current law and who's in violation of it. The second one is what's going to do with what we got.
Well, and that's what I'm looking at. I want to, those 3 are ones that we should be able to define pretty easily whether or not we can,
Yeah, sure.
right?
But we need to write the ordinance.
We do, but for the first reading next month.
Yeah.
But I'd like to take action to make sure we do those 4 for next month.
Point of clarity, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I'm just gonna stand firm on this. There is an ordinance. The ordinance is not being acted on. And so I think that.
Everybody's agreeing with you, James.
I think that Councilmember Mather actually highlighted an important feature of this, that yes, we need to address the ordinance, but those activities that are illegal need to be cited.
So that's what the enforcement was. We said here we want to have, one, how can we do it tomorrow, as well as how can we maintain it for the next year?
I would say if chief needs help or whatever he needs, you tell us, give it to him, get it done.
Okay, but I need a motion.
You got it. So, who are we giving this action to?
Well, if I look at it, it is one is for the chief and the other 3 are for the city attorney.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the chief help us determine how we can increase enforcement to not grossly violate laws. That the city attorney helps us provide, or determines if we can provide a penalty for marketing an unregistered property. Look at what the maximum penalty is and what our legal ability is to have STRs that are corporate owned and not owner occupied registered as a hotel.
Yes.
Second.
Any more discussion? Any more?
I second the motion.
Yep, I heard that. So moved by Lucy, second by Michelle. Any other further comments? Any other further things? Then I call for the vote. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. And then we come to the executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074, personnel matters. This should be real quick. It's just a update on the process for the permits and matters. Oh, I did say that.
You need
Thought I said personnel, going into executive session, personnel matters, possible executive session. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 551. Personnel.
Sorry, it takes so long.
10:40.
Guys, with all the negative comments in the beginning, I didn't know since I didn't sign the paper if I could say anything, but thank you very much. I think y'all are doing a fantastic job. Somebody will replace your chair, whatever. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Michelle. Y'all are awesome. Come back.
It's good to see you. Hey Don, let me shake your hand on your last time. Thank you, thank you. Exactly. Nice comments. Nice comments.